All right, so now we're going to create this tiny little application. I wouldn't even call it an application. It's really like a component where we can vote for our favorite framework, and then when we submit, it'll show the results down below, and we're going to keep track of it with a map. Now, I'm using Bootstrap here, so as you can see in my folder structure here, all I have is an index.html and an empty JavaScript file. There's no CSS because I'm just using Bootstrap classes because I brought in the Bootstrap CDN. All right, and just to look at the HTML real quick, we just have basically a card, and inside that we have a card body with the form, with the poll form ID, and then we just have some divs with the class of form check. We have some check inputs. Well, they're actually radio buttons, so we can only select one at a time. And that's pretty much it. Then we have a submit button at the bottom, and we have a results ID. This is where we're going to display the results. All right, so let's jump into our JavaScript, and the first thing I'm going to do is set up a map. So we're going to say const, we're going to call it poll, and then let's say new map, and then we want to create our poll options. So remember, we use set to add the data, and the key for this first one will be React, and the value is going to be 0. The value for all of them are going to be 0 because that represents the number of votes, and of course it's going to be 0 to begin with. So we'll have React, let's do Vue, let's do Angular and Svelte, and then we'll say other. All right, so we just have a value in our map for each of our options here. And of course, it doesn't have to be frameworks. It could be whatever, anything you want. Now, we obviously want something to happen when we submit the button, so let's go down to the bottom here, and let's say document.getElementById, and let's grab the form. So we'll say poll-form, and then we're going to add an event listener onto that, and when we submit that form, then we're going to call a function called submitForm. Oops. Okay. And then let's go up here and create that function. So we'll say function submit form, and we're going to pass in our event object, and then we have to prevent the default behavior because it's a form that we're submitting. And then we'll get the selected option. So let's say const, and we'll call this selected option, and we can get that with document.query selector, and the selector I'm going to put in here is going to be an input and with some brackets, and I want to say the input that has a name of, actually, you know what, let's put this in wrap this in double quotes because I'm going to use single quotes within here. So name is going to equal poll-option, right? And if we look at our HTML here, all of these have a name of poll option. So I'm just selecting all of these. And then I want to get the one that's checked. So what we can do is after the brackets here, we can say :checked. All right. And then just that, let's do a console log of selected option. And just make sure we can get whatever one is actually checked when we submit. So I'm going to choose view and submit. And you can see input, value view. Okay, if I choose Svelte and I submit, you can see that one is the value of Svelte. So we know we can get the correct option. Now I don't want to be able to submit and not have an option selected. So let's just do a check here real quick, and we'll say if not selected option, then let's just do an alert, and we'll say please select an option, and then we're just going to return from that. All right, now to keep going down here, we want to now create a variable here. Let's say let vote count, and we're actually going to use the get method on our map. So let's say poll.get, and then we want whatever the selected option is, but we want the value. Selected option just points to the input, so we want to make sure we get the dot value. All right, then we want to set the poll, so let's say poll.set, and we're going to set the the selected option dot value, which is going to be either, React, Angular, Svelte, or Vue or other, and then we want to pass in as the value the vote count, whatever the vote count is, +1, right? Because it's getting a vote. And then once we do that, we just want to display the results. Actually, what we could do first is just console log the map just to show you that this is working. So if I select Vue and I click Submit, you'll see Vue now has 1 vote. If I select Angular, Submit, now Vue has 1, Angular has 1. If I select Vue again, now Vue has 2. So we're using this map to keep track of our poll answers. Now, obviously, I don't want to just console log that. I want to display it, down here. So let's get rid of the console log and let's have a function called display results. And then we'll create that. So let's come down here and let's say function. Let's say display results. Okay, and then we want to grab our results div. So results is document dot, and let's say get element by ID. It has an ID of results. And then I'm going to set, so when this runs, initially I want to clear the results, right? So we'll say results dot inner HTML and set that to nothing to begin with. Then we're going to want to loop through our map votes. So let's say for, and then in here we can say let, and in brackets we'll say option and votes, and this is a for of, so we're going to say of the poll, right? We can do this because it's an iterable. So in here, let's create a variable called option element. So our option element, and we're going to basically create a div here. So let's say document dot create element, and we're going to create a div element. All right, then I want to add some classes on that, because what I'm going to do is show down here a list. I'm going to show all these elements, all these frameworks with a number, and that number is going to be the number of votes. So let's say option, and I want to have like a bottom border and stuff like that. So I'm going to take the option element, and we're going to say class list dot add, and then I'm just going to add some bootstrap classes in here. So let's add border, so border bottom. I want some padding, so I'm also going to add the class of p-2, and then I'm going to make it flexbox, so d-flex, display flex, and I also want to justify the content between, so justify content between. All right, and then we want to take that option element and set the inner HTML, and I want to set it to the option and the votes. And by option, I mean the name of the framework. So let's put some backticks in here, and I'm gonna add some strong tags. So let's say strong, and then that will be the option. Okay, so option, and then the number of votes. Actually, let's put a colon here and a space, and then after that we'll say the votes, and then just the word votes. Okay, and then we just have to add that to the DOM. So we're going to take our results div, and we're going to append child. I can't see what I'm typing. Append child, and we want to append the option element. Okay. All right, and that should do it. So let's go ahead and choose, we'll say React, submit. And now what we're seeing here is each option, right? The option, and then the number of votes, because we're looping through the map here using a for of loop, and we're able to get basically the key and the value, right? The option and the votes. So React has one. If I can vote twice, or as many times as I want. If I click again, it goes to 2, 3, 4. If I choose Svelte, I can vote a bunch of times. Now, if you want to stop that, and obviously, if this were a real application, you'd want some back end stuff going on and track IP addresses to make sure people can't vote twice. But just to do it in the UI is pretty simple. We can just come into the submit form, and we're going to go right under display results, and let's say disable form fields after submit. Okay, so what we'll do is document, and we want to get the poll form. So let's say get element by ID, poll dash form, and then we want to disable all of the inputs, right, and the button. So we'll use .query selector all because there's multiple inputs. So I want to select all inputs and also the button. And then what I want to do is loop through those. So for each, let's say for each element, oops, let's put a function here. So we'll say for each element, then I want to set the disabled attribute. So I'll say L dot and then set attribute, and we're going to set the disabled attribute, and we're going to set it to true. All right, so now if I come over here and I say react and submit, now everything is disabled. Okay, all of the inputs and the button, I can't do anything else, and React has one vote. Now, of course, if I reload, it's going to go back, but so is the votes, because it's nothing's persisting. This is just UI stuff with JavaScript. But I thought that this was a pretty good example to show you how we can use a map to keep track of some data. All right, so in the next video, what we're going to do is start to look at some custom data structures that aren't built into JavaScript, but we can create classes so that we can initialize these structures like stacks and queues from within JavaScript.